The January camp national team rosters were announced yesterday. Just how many of these players could realistically make the first team? Will Liverpool do what Arsenal couldn't and score with the EFL's pesky, miter-made match ball? And do we even want Elon Musk to buy into soccer? That and more here on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. Hello, good morning, welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, working towards becoming the new home of the American conversation. Coming to you live each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Robert Kerr, up from the lower leagues. Happy to be joined by the afternoon host of SiriusXM Radio, Mr. Jason Davis. How do you do, sir?
I am doing well, Robert. Good to be here, ready to talk about Elon Musk, apparently. Great. Excited. Thrilled. Let's go.
This is your last holiday show from Puerto Rico. What are you most looking forward to about your sojourn home?
Nothing. What? We should have prepared this question before the show. I don't know why I don't have an answer for that. Nothing? I don't want to go back to real life, Robert. Who would want to do that? And return to...
I thought you'd maybe say, my favorite hamburger joint, or my own bed, or, my home studio.
Sure.
Nothing?
Those things. I don't have a favorite hamburger joint. My bed's okay. This bed is not great, so I guess that would be a bit of an upgrade. My home studio, sure. It would sound better. It would look better. That I wouldn't have to hold the microphone. So there is some joy there, I suppose.
My apologies if I have not been sensitive enough. How is your mic arm holding up?
Oh yeah, I'm building muscle as we speak. I'm doing a twofer here on Morning Kickaround.
You're not cramping up or anything mid-show?
No, I'm okay. I can stretch. I can switch arms. I got a technique working here. Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna get kicked off with our headlines in just a second, but I want to remind you to subscribe to the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. The fight for 500 continues. We are creeping ever so close to that first benchmark of 500 subscribers. Follow along and connect with the show at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. You can listen here on YouTube or check us out on Spotify. Morning Kickaround, 2 words, morning. And then you go kick it around. Are you ready to get our first touches in? Kick some long balls here, Jason?
Let's do it.
All right, cue it. Wednesday. Long ball number 1. Our headlines here on Morning Kickaround. We kick them long, we bring them down. Leading the show, United States men's national team roster was announced yesterday for the January camp, and as is tradition, this camp is populated by domestic-based players.
Yes.
So obviously the conversation happens each and every year, who could make it, who doesn't. Just when you saw this roster put out, was there any names that raised your eyebrows, furrowed your brows? What were your brows doing upon initial examination of the January camp roster?
I don't think that surprise is really part of the equation here, because it is January. I mean, this is a camp that's been termed Camp Cupcake in the past.
How do you feel about that? That's pretty derogatory, right?
It is derogatory, but at the same time, I mean, history will tell you there aren't a lot of guys who appear in these camps who either become first team national team players, and there are a couple of examples. I guess that makes it worth it. Although I saw my friend Jeremiah Oshan was writing at Sounder at Heart this morning, and he wrote, maybe it's time to end this camp. Maybe the utility of this camp is not as good as it used to be, because now we're in an era where MLS teams are getting started earlier and earlier. We've got transfers are now part of the story for MLS players in a way that they weren't before. The off season. Now, the off season for non-playoff teams is still pretty long, but the off season for teams that play deep into the playoffs is pretty short. Like, it's not really that long of an off season. And again, because the camps are starting earlier and earlier into the winter, now you do have a question. So we've seen players miss camps because their teams were like, no, we got to get you ready for Champions League, buddy, or Champions Cup now. We can't let you go off and kick a ball around against, Bosnia and Herzegovina, or in this case, Venezuela and Costa Rica. We need you here. So if that's going to be an issue, if that's going to be part of the equation, then why are we doing this? And okay, so we've got the roster here. And I will tie this back to what Jeremiah was writing at Sounder at Heart in a second, but goalkeepers, Calendar, Freeze, Schulte, Steffen. Sure, why not? Whatever. Again, a lot of this is going to be like, okay, I guess these guys are fine. They're Calendar, I don't think has shown enough progress to make me think he's ever going to be a first 23, 25-man roster national team.
Some folks suggesting online that this was an Inter Miami goodwill pick.
Because Mauricio Pochettino needs to curry goodwill with Inter Miami? Is that
there's other people in the room on these sort of things, right?
Well, okay. Let's make a point that Pochettino asked MLS teams for their cooperation on this camp. Let's also make the point that this camp is happening in Florida. It is nearby. It is very close to where Drake Callender plays his soccer in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So if he's there and he's been a national team call-up before, get the guy in for some training sessions. Like, this is part of it. Matt Freese had a season worthy of a call-up with NYCFC. Not sure anybody ever sees him reaching the level of national team goalkeeper, but there he is. Schulte and Steffen are different. Obviously, Steffen's got some history with the national team, kind of drifted out, now drifting maybe slightly back in off of his time in Colorado, although I don't think anybody sees him as overtaking Matt Turner for the number one right now, even though Matt Turner is not playing regular minutes at Crystal Palace. Patrick Schulte is one I do think might have a national team first choice goalkeeper kind of path. He's very young by goalkeeper standards, I guess, as is Calendar on some level. But I think the move to Europe needs to happen before we seriously consider Patrick Schulte as a number one candidate. Then you got defenders. Max Arfstad, Columbus Crew. George Campbell, CF Montreal. DeJuan Jones, Columbus Crew. Shaq Moore, FC Dallas, just got traded. Jalen Neal, CF Montreal, just got traded. Tim Reams, Charlotte FC. He's the old wizened veteran. He's here again. Again, local, right? I mean, local in the sense that he's domestic now. So you're not pulling him away. He wouldn't be in this camp if he wasn't playing in MLS now. Might as well give him a look. Still don't have anybody who's overtaken him as a first choice left-sided center back for the U.S. men's national team. Miles Robinson, FC Cincinnati. All right, there's a ceiling there, but sure. John Tolkien, New York Red Bulls. I mean, the mix of this, and then Walker Zimmerman, again, who's a veteran player, went to a World Cup. Is he really a guy we expect to be in the team in 2026? I don't know.
He's a bit of a forgotten man in my head.
Well, he got injured. He I think he's serviceable in certain circumstances. But again, if that's the level of our center backs, then we're kind of in a spot here. What I'll say is you get some lingering veterans who maybe are fringy if lots of injuries happen to the first choice guys. And I would put Robinson and Zimmerman in that camp. Then you have guys who are younger and untested and have not seen a national team camp before, and that's Campbell, and that's Neal, and that's Tolkien to a certain extent. I think he has one or two caps. John Tolkien, Max Arfstad has never seen a national team camp before. Right, so you're taking sort of like, I guess you could argue that this is like veteran guys, kind of middle tier guys that maybe aren't national teamers, but why not take a look at them? And then some younger players who could be national teamers in a first choice environment down the road. I think Tolkien probably fits in that group from this group. The rest of them, I don't know. Now, Jackson Reagan, he's not in this team.
Tell us about Jackson Reagan.
Well, Jackson Reagan was in this team last year, and in the January camp last year. Mm-hmm. He's 6 years old. He was a Defender of the Year finalist in Major League Soccer. He was one of the, he's been one of the best passing center backs in the league. And is he better than George Campbell in my mind? Yes. Is he better than Jalen Neal in my mind? Yes. Is he better than Walker Zimmerman, Miles Robinson, and Tim Ream? Well, that's maybe more debatable, but he is newer in the sense that he's a new face. Now, again, he is 26 years old. And if you're Mauricio Pochettino, you're going to spend time blooding a 26-year-old who's never been a national teamer before when you've got a 22-year-old or a 21-year-old who maybe hasn't reached the level of Jackson Reagan, but is certainly has more growth, more room for growth. Jalen Neal is the guy here that would fit that category. So, I mean, again, I don't know if anybody should get too excited or worked up or angry about this roster, but I think you can, just like every single time we see one of these, look at it and go, well, I'm kind of intrigued by that guy. So I'd like to see what he does. Kramaski, Emeka Anelli of Real Salt Lake, Diego Luna, also Real Salt Lake. Again, this is a guy whose national team career so far has been this weird. What's going on here? Why isn't he an Olympic player? What? So he's getting a look. At least there's something there. I don't know what his fit would be with the full national team. Right? If everybody's healthy and playing regular minutes, I'm not sure Diego Luna has a place in the full squad right now. Maybe he makes a European move and changes the equation. Jack McGlynn, Philadelphia Union. Forwards are Patrick Aubameyang of Charlotte, up and coming, had a good season. Is he good enough? I don't think so. Caden Clark, another guy with a weird path through his career. He was at the the Barcelona Residential Academy in Arizona. He's actually from Minnesota. He never played for Minnesota United, but they had his homegrown rights. He ended up with the Red Bulls. Remember, he got sold to Leipzig. Then I think he had like a appendectomy or something. Like he had a medical issue that slowed him down. That's fascinating. Jesus Ferreira, been a national teamer, probably not what anybody thinks of as a first choice forward for the U.S. men's national team, but again, Camp Cupcake, January MLS based camp. Brian Gutierrez listed as a forward, which I think is interesting. Matko Milovic, who doesn't even have a team right now, just left, I think, Newell's Old Boys in Argentina. Indiana Vasilev, who has had good moments in St. Louis, especially in that first year when they were press crazy and getting turnovers that were gifted to them. And Brian White.
Inexplicable turnovers.
And Brian White, who deserves to be in this team. I don't know. I don't get worked up over it. Again, you can maybe think, oh, there's a couple of guys who should be on this team that aren't there. But it's never enough. This is never important enough for me to be offended when players miss out on a January camp. Even though for them, it's probably not great, right? For Jackson Reagan, he's probably disappointed that he didn't get a call this time.
Yeah, that's a good shout. And I'd say the only thing that would kind of get my get hot under the collar was if Diego Luna wasn't included somehow. Like if he wasn't in this one, then he would just probably never make a camp.
If Diego Luna scores 3 goals and picks up an assist or 2 in 2 matches against Venezuela and Costa Rica, is that going to make the argument that he should be a full national team player? Then maybe makes it slightly
probably
more.
Not. I mean, it can't hurt.
It can't hurt him. It can't hurt him.
But we're
that's about as far as it goes. That's as far as it goes, Rob.
So this group of players will take on Venezuela at Chase Stadium in Fort Lauderdale on Jan 18th and Costa Rica on January 22nd at Inter and Co Stadium in Orlando, Florida. We will return to the subject at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock for Hot Topic. We're going to discuss which of these groupings of players we're most concerned with and pleasantly surprised with. But moving on to long ball number 2 here on Wednesday. It is January, so transfer season is one of the main topics to discuss. So we'll take a look at MLS-related transfers now. To top the list, probably the biggest name floating around MLS circles outside of Marcus Rashford to Seattle, which doesn't seem real. Something with a little bit more traction seems to be San Diego FC is on the short list for Kevin De Bruyne, and apparently he prefers an MLS move over something in the Middle East.
Okay, imagine you are Kevin De Bruyne, Rob. Imagine you are world football superstar Kevin De Bruyne, one of the best midfielders of his generation. Just try. I know it's difficult, but try. He's one of my favorite players of his generation. I love Kevin De Bruyne. He's incredible.
Him at Wolfsburg was something else.
He has been playing and playing and playing and playing and then playing some more, and then he gets hurt. And then he comes back and they go, Kevin, you got to play a lot. And he goes, okay. And then he gets hurt. And then he goes to the media and he says, we play too much. And then he gets hurt. And then he plays some more, and then he plays some more, and then he plays some more, and then he ponders his Belgium future because he's been playing too much. If Kevin De Bruyne came to Major League Soccer, I would imagine that is a reduction in the number of games he would have to play. Now, there's the travel thing. That I don't think you could dismiss that. I know it's MLS is not as intense as playing in the Premier League. That's true from week to week.
In some regards, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly the training sessions are not going to be at that level, right? Now, but I think here you are talking about a certain personality, right? That unlike a Marcus Rashford, who linked to Seattle, out of just pure wild, what else? Where else?
A guy talked about it once in a room.
Yeah, other people. Yeah, like, hey, would we like to have Marcus Rashford? Yeah, I think we would. How much would it cost? More than we have. Okay, I guess we're not getting Marcus Rashford. I mean, that's how that goes. I do think Kevin De Bruyne is at the point in his career, like he checks all the boxes for a potential MLS late career signing, doesn't he? He's accomplished nearly everything he can. He's not going to win a World Cup with Belgium. He's accomplished nearly everything he can on the club side of the game. What else is there more? What else is there to do for Kevin De Bruyne? Take a vacation. Spend your life, the rest of your playing career. I don't like. Okay,
I was going to say I'm sure some people would love to hear that a move to MLS would be like a vacation. But I want one last little note on him is the success or non-success of a DP acquisition in MLS seems to be very mentality oriented. You said MLS vacation, that didn't work so well for Steven Gerrard, but other folks with, a little bit more grit between their teeth at the proposal of coming to MLS seem to do better. Does he have the mentality to do so?
You take a risk, right? You take a risk if you sign a player like Kevin De Bruyne. If you are San Diego in this case, because that's the club that's been linked to him, you do take that risk. You are hoping that he shows up with the right mentality. That as much as this is a reduction in the intensity of his playing career, that he's going to understand he still has to put in a certain level in order to achieve something. And he's going to be, if he does join San Diego, he's joining an expansion team, and there's no guarantees that any of that's going to go well for San Diego. Just because we've seen some expansion teams in their first year surprise people doesn't mean that it's going to work that way for San Diego FC. When I say vacation, what I mean is he would most likely retire from Belgium, from international duty. He passed on October games because of his workload, right? And he has been talking about the workload more than anybody else out there in world football, I think. Him and Rodri, right? But Rodri came after De Bruyne. De Bruyne set that tone. He was the one saying, hey, this is way too much soccer. So if he can clock a check, spend his days when he's not playing in beautiful San Diego, California, where I hear the weather is just about as perfect as it can possibly be, also, hopefully compete for a thing here or there, right? There are maybe some guys who had a bad mentality, but I do think a lot of players are realizing that they want to achieve something here. They don't want it to be a stain on their record. And they certainly, a lot of them, I mean, you look at Messi, you look at Suarez, Busquets, Alba, the crew in Miami. And there are other examples of players who came over despite having achieved things in Europe. They're still competitive people, right? They didn't stop being competitive people. This is a problem that a lot of players have when they retire. They go, how do I replace this thing that I have where I have to win and go out and compete all the time? So as long as that still exists for Kevin De Bruyne, then it's a possibility it could work. Now, this is worth mentioning, right? KY718. Lorenzo Insigne enters the chat. Now, there are rumors that Insigne could be out in Toronto. They're trying to figure out a way to get him out. Obviously, that has not been good. Obviously, that has been an absolute disaster. Insigne is not a player who showed up, who gave enough of himself when he was here in Major League Soccer. Bernadeschi maybe a little bit less, but then also just that whole thing was mismanaged by Toronto in terms of the targets. And again, can't guarantee that Kevin De Bruyne would work or that this is even real in the sense that there's a deal on the table and he's considering it. I just have seen enough here. And people like Tom Boger, people that know things, have said there's some circling around each other, that there's still some talk, that De Bruyne is still open to this. So I just think it's worth mentioning.
KY also throws in the name Shaqiri. And while that didn't go perfectly for Shaqiri, I saw him live a few times, and it just looked like he was the wrong piece in that puzzle. That was not the guy that the Fire needed at that moment. They didn't have a lot to work with, and he was a bit of an accessory player.
Right.
He
Yeah.
wasn't going to lift the whole boat there for the Fire. Other moves across MLS, Alan Pulido from Sporting Kansas City to Chivas de Guadalajara.
Back to Chivas. This is what a bailout for Sporting Kansas City.
Right.
That Chivas is going to take Alan Pulido off their hands for a decent chunk of money.
I mean, was his situation what part of what weighed them down this year?
I mean, Pulido was a sunk cost thing because he was making a lot of money and eating up a DP slot and not really delivering. Now, again, this could be just like we talked about Shaqiri and that being a Fire problem as much as it was a Shaqiri. By the way, Shaqiri, jerk, kind of a jerk. Like just be aware. You knew what Jordan Shaqiri was before he arrived, okay? So that the attitude and the personality is maybe something you should have considered if you were Chicago Fire.
He's a square man with sharp edges.
But you also do have a club that was poorly run and a personnel around him that wasn't good enough to help him. That could be part of the problem in Kansas City. I think they had some nice pieces. They got old. That's part of the problem. It's still kind of a marvel that Peter Vermees keeps holding on to that job, but I think that they just don't know any other way at this point. And I like Peter a lot, but I just don't think, it's shown that he is caught up or staying caught up with the rest of Major League Soccer. But if they get Pulido off the books and he goes back to Guadalajara, then this is a big let-off for them. He didn't deliver enough on what they paid him. And obviously injury was part of the story for Pulido as well. But they made a bet on him. They went ambitious. They spent some money on him. He scored a couple of goals, not enough, and now they get to move on. I think everybody can be happy here, including Alan Pulido.
In other Alan news, Alan Velasco rumored that Boca Juniors, the Argentine Giants, throwing upwards of $11 million his way.
Yeah, that one is interesting too, right? Has he been good enough in Major League Soccer at the age of 22 to justify that kind of spend from Boca Juniors? And I think I actually saw that Estudiantes was also pondering a move for Velasco.
Huh.
It is, I've seen this comment a couple places. It is fascinating that you've got the South American clubs stepping up to bail out or buy some players from Major League Soccer. That's not the direction I think a lot of us thought this was going to go.
The arrow doesn't usually point south for these guys.
Well, it hadn't for a while because the money was all messed up. In Argentina especially, but Brazil wasn't flush with cash. But now, John Textor is down there making things happen at Botafogo. I think there's more money in the mix. There's money coming to these clubs from other sources now with Club World Cup and things like that. And it's interesting to see these teams kind of go, well, we're not going to pry 22-year-olds out of Europe, but we can maybe go get a player like Alan Velasco, who is clearly talented and maybe, again, hasn't delivered everything that FC Dallas wanted, although that could also be an FC Dallas problem. But, is Argentine, right? This is a bring him home. This is a get a domestic player kind of situation. And I guess if this is the market for MLS, good for MLS. Good for MLS and good for FC Dallas. And now they just have to figure out how to spend that money if they do indeed sell Alan Velasco.
And then this is a little bit of a random, but last note on here. Do you think that Jalen Neal acquired by Montreal moves the needle at all for Montreal? Does that raise their status?
Montreal status? I mean, I think this was again one of those deals that made sense for both parties. Jalen Neal gets a chance to go start in Montreal after some bumpy moments in Los Angeles on his rise into the first team. Then you have the Galaxy in desperate need of some cap relief. And as champions, what everybody on your roster does is they come with their hands out and they go, hey, I just helped you win a championship. Give me more cash. Please give me more. Give me more. And again, the Galaxy were already up against it. They had some things that were going to be problematic for them. So they get some GAM. Jalen Neal gets to go play and eat poutine, I guess. I don't know what else he can do in Montreal. I've been there once. Seems like a nice place. Go explore Montreal. I think again, I like this move for Jalen Neal because he's going to get an opportunity to be tested as a first choice center back. Montreal has always been such an odd place.
Yeah, I don't understand it because they've had some really top tier players, but they're a lot of the times a bit obscure.
Well, you have interesting ownership there, Joey Saputo, the Saputo family, right? And now he has Bologna in his portfolio, and it seems like that has taken over the primacy for the Saputos, which means that Montreal has kind of been left to wither on the vine a bit. But if you're gonna get better quickly in Major League Soccer, the best thing to do is to get MLS players who you think can be good enough to make you better, right? This is what Bruce Arena is doing in San Jose. He's just bringing a bunch of guys he already knows and just trying to make that team competent. So if that's what Montreal is doing, and Jalen Neal's not nearly as proven as some of the guys that Bruce Arena is bringing in, but he's got talent. Right? He's not talented. He just hasn't been consistently playing so that we can get a run on Jalen Neal. And hopefully that's going to work out for him. I think from a national team perspective, you want Jalen Neal to thrive in Montreal because there aren't a lot of center backs kind of in the pipeline at that age that we can say, this is a guy for the future. He's 21 years old. Let's see what happens.
Mike Thomas giving my first genuine laugh of the day, saying he's full of Bologna, if you ask me. Moving on to you got that's the worst thing I get in the mornings is this distasteful glance from Jason for a dad joke.
You guys don't know that Rob showed me his dad joke book that he was gifted for Christmas. So get ready for that. If you're like, oh, what I want with my soccer is more dad jokes, here you go. Morning Kick Around is here for you.
Yeah, I got some research material for Christmas. But moving on to long ball number 3, as a Liverpool fan and a Detroit Lions fan, I've become accustomed to hearing quotes and some monologues from coaches that really gets you motivated and gets your blood boiling. In the last 24 hours, some coaches over in England producing some less than inspirational quotes. We'll start off yesterday. Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta kind of giving his team an excuse for their poor finishing after complaining about the ball. The ball was just too light and it was flying over the bar, and that's why they couldn't score or defend against Newcastle yesterday.
Let's hear Miguel explain this.
Kicked a lot of the balls over the bar, and it's tricky that this ball flies a lot. It's just different, very different to the Premier League ball, and you have to adapt to that because it flies different. When you touch it, the grip is very different as well. So you adapt to that.
Okay, here's the thing, Miguel. This may be true on some level, right? The ball could be different. Do you remember the Jabulani?
Yeah. I reference that comes to mind more often than it should.
2010 World Cup ball. All the goalkeepers complaining about the Jabulani. It was a terrible ball. It's the worst ball ever. I can't believe we're playing with this ball. It's unfair to us as goalkeepers because what, it knuckled? Is that what it was?
It was a knuckler. So there was a lot of long distance goals in that tournament.
So I remember that tournament being full of those. Wasn't that the James Rodriguez coming out party, or was that Brazil?
That was Brazil.
Remember.
That was 2014 in Brazil.
All right.
It was vuvuzelas and knuckleball shots in 2010.
Okay, so that's what it was. Yeah. Miguel Arteta could be right that the ball is different enough that it has some impact on how players kick it. I mean, again, this is not to say there isn't some truth to what he's saying, but to bring it up in a press conference after you've been handled. Now, okay, you look at the balance of that game, you look at the stats, you look at the chances. Arsenal was
knocking on the door almost the whole game.
Exactly. Right. Their issue was finishing. And then again, this is the excuse. So, okay, there are two possibilities here. Mikel Arteta is a big whiny baby making excuses about how his team couldn't find a goal against Newcastle, or he's protecting his players. Maybe, if you want to get convoluted about this
like
could
I said, quotes that get your team fired up and saying my team didn't know how to adjust to a ball doesn't seem like good cover.
No, it doesn't. But at the same time, when you've got Kai Havertz and the group taking heat for not being able to score, what you're doing by saying the ball is different is, and they may know it's a bunch of bullshit. They may know Mikel Arteta is hablando mierda, like he's making up stuff, but that at least gets, the gaffer's got me. Like, yes, maybe I screwed up and I'm feeling bad about it, but the gaffer isn't going out into the media and saying, these guys got to finish better. Can't believe we didn't score. This is so terrible. Or even responding to questions about bad finishing by saying, yes, we need to do better. He is actually giving cover. I know you said it's weak cover, but he's trying to give cover to his. That's the only thing I can think of here, because why are you bringing this up? Everybody plays with the same ball. Alexander Isak plays with the same ball as Arsenal does in that game, and he didn't have a problem.
To be fair, his goal did rip the top of the net, so maybe that would have gone lower, not tucked inside the crossbar. Right. Thank you, Mateo. Wayne Font's my goat. That's a throwback. I haven't heard that name in quite some time. That's some early '90s Lions reference. And then Nate correctly, same ball for both teams, and so true. And this is for clarity, this is the miter ball that's used in all the EFL matches. So league, Championship, League One, League Two, all of the Carabao Cup games, and I believe other things. And the Carabao Cup was quick to counter this quote, saying that this goes through all the FIFA regulations and everything that,
of course, it does.
All the balls do. So that's basically just pushing back that the ball was just fine. In the second less than inspirational quote that came across our desks, Ange Postecoglou in the preparation for the League Cup semifinal leg 1 match with Liverpool this afternoon. This quote, do you have the audio for this, or are we reading this one from Postecoglou?
We do. Here we go. This is what Ange had to say about Mo Salah if he was a Spurs player.
Mo's a world-class player, but you put him in our team at the moment, I'm not sure he would have the same impact because of the situation we're in as a group. As attacking player, what do you need? You need a team that's kind of in good form, creating opportunities, playing on the front foot, having a really solid sort of foundation of a defence that, is cohesive. Like, none of these things exist at the moment. So we're relying really on individual moments, and
that's a brutal quote in my opinion. If I was
Mo's an unbelievable player, but he's playing.
If I was a Spurs, the double tap, that's fine. It happens to the best of us, Jason. But if I was a player, I mean, granted, my professional soccer player days are well in my rearview mirror. But if I was Son or any of the other Timo Werner, are you filled with motivation that I can, succeed, and this group is really moving forward in the right direction? If Mo Salah wouldn't even be good in my team,
it's just a different approach, but it's still the same idea. This is still cover for Spurs attacking players, and you can talk about Timo Werner, and Mateo is saying that Timo Werner is so bad, a warm body is better than him.
Woo.
Okay, but Son is not Timo Werner, and he's not playing well, and he's not scoring goals, and his form has dropped off. And I think what this is Anne saying even the best players struggle when a team is not playing cohesive soccer, right? This is just, I think this is actually probably very true. I don't think Mo Salah is scoring the goals, doing what he's doing at this level. He's still a very good player, right? He would still get his share, but he may very much be in a Sun situation if he was a Spurs player, because, as Ange says, they do not have the Now, the funny thing about this is that it's Ange who continues to stick to his guns on his approach that leads to the lack of a platform that allows for Spurs to be better defensively, which he actually mentions in that quote. He mentions some of the defensive structure that allows Mo Salah to feel free to play the way he plays at Liverpool, which is delivering all the goals. So what Ange is actually saying is, I'm not doing a very good job of managing this team. And as much as I love Ange as a quote and as a character, man, what are you doing? You are saying that one of the best players in the world wouldn't have as much success at Spurs because of your tactics. Ange, those are you choose the tactics. That the buck stops on your desk. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, we shall see if that inspirational quote motivates Postecoglou's Spurs past Liverpool in the semifinal.
Well, one more note on this, because this is the other part of it from KY. playing with better players makes you better. British media seem hell-bent on browbeating Ange as much as possible. Okay, again,
Definitely.
I have some time for criticism of Ange on his approach. When things aren't working, you make changes, and he hasn't done nearly enough of that. But there is also this. The injury situation, the continued absence of important players at Spurs has made it very difficult in Ange Postecoglou. And if Liverpool was going through a similar injury crisis and Virgil van Dijk was missing and Curtis Jones was missing and Konate was missing, you would probably have the same issues. The team would have to play differently to make up for those absences. And if they didn't play differently, they would be open on the back. And then your attacking players, as Ange mentions with Son, are then responsible individually for making things happen. You can only ask Kulusevski and Son to do so much before everybody knows what's happening here. It's going to be easier to beat Spurs.
Yeah, no doubt. Liverpool and Tottenham this afternoon, on Wednesday afternoon, in the Carabao Cup semifinal leg 1. Be sure to hit subscribe on the Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. Morning Kickaround, 2 words, on our way to 500. Be sure to click the button and follow along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, Blue Sky. And if you want to write an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. We're going to take a quick breath and return to analysis of the men's national team January camp roster here on Morning Kickaround. Just one sec. Our hot topic here on Wednesday morning on Morning Kickaround, the January camp roster is out. We've had a chance to look at it. We kind of want to ask the question, how many of the players included here in the January camp have a realistic shot in joining the number 1A real deal national team when it comes time for that?
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair way to look at this. I mean, why are you doing this if you're not trying to find players that might be in your first team picture in the future? Now, the difference here from a normal January camp or the average January camp, Rob, I guess, is that we are 16 months, something like that, away from the naming of a roster for a World Cup team for the U.S. men's national team in a home World Cup on American soil for the most part. So there is this extra level of paying attention to this, right? Okay, wait. Who is the now? If we went through who we project to make the World Cup roster, are there any spots open? Like, can you think of a spot that's like, okay, well, is Christopher Lund locked in as a left back replacement for Jedi Robinson if Robinson can't play? Is your backup left back Christopher Lund and we're done with that? Or does John Tolkien, who immediately jumps off of this page because he's been good in MLS, because he just helped his team make a run to an MLS Cup final, and because it seems as though he has a European future, although things are very quiet on the potential January move for John Tolkien at the moment. And maybe when we have Tom Bogert on the show on Friday, we can ask him about John Tolkien and his European future. But that's one guy, right? So again, you have to think about this not just as, is this player talented? Is he a potential? Like Diego Luna, whose picture we have right here on this graphic made by MLS with the January roster. Everybody likes watching Diego Luna play.
Yeah, for sure. Very fun.
He's done some great stuff in Major League Soccer. He feels like a little bit of a luxury player in a national team setup because I'm not sure the defensive work is up to that standard. And by the way, this is also a question for some other players who are maybe more in the first team picture. Gio Reyna, who can't get on the field when Julian Brandt is healthy at Dortmund. I guess that's a question for him. But that's my point, though, is if Gio Reyna is healthy, is Diego Luna a national team player? Do we have an answer to that? Probably he's not, right? Probably he's not.
I would classify that as to be determined. And as you were throwing around the name Gio Reyna, what would your reaction been if Gio Reyna appeared on this January roster?
Oh, that would be incredible. That would be, I mean, it would certainly make it a lot more interesting as a roster. I mean, it would say a lot about Dortmund if they were releasing him for this roster. No, he's in the team.
His stock would just like crash, right?
Well, he's in the team. He dresses. I don't think it's that Sahin doesn't see value in Gio Reyna. It's that he is just not the first choice guy. But we as national team fans are chomping at the bit for Gio to get a consistent run of first team minutes so that we can measure him up, so we can see. And obviously we want him to, we know that Gio Reyna is a talented player. Like, he's shown enough that we're not like, oh, well, he's still growing as a player. And I don't really see it yet. No, we've seen it. It's just that he can't get the runway for us to go, okay, he's up to speed now. And when we get the national team together for meaningful games, and we've got Nations League coming up. I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like exactly, but that's the only thing that, the only thing we really have to measure this national team by over the next year and a half are things like Nations League and Gold Cup. So when you look at players like Luna, you have to consider who's in front of him. And obviously, again, that's a little bit more complicated when you've got a Gio Reyna who's not playing consistent minutes. But there are some players here. It's like, oh, is that a nice player? Do I think he's talented? Sure. Brian Gutierrez. Can I imagine Brian Gutierrez getting into the first 23 or 25 for the U.S. men's national team right now? No, I can't. Can I imagine it in a year and a half? Still no. Like, still, I just don't. There's not a spot, right? There's nobody like, well, we're going to cycle out that midfielder or that forward, and Brian Gutierrez is going to be the guy to step in. And I think part of that too is that these are all MLS-based players, and it's almost like, instead of thinking about, is that player good enough for the national team, or do they have the potential to break into the national team picture? It's, will they be in Europe by 2026? And will they have enough minutes under their belt in Europe to have shown that they're the quality that would be Mauricio Pochettino's preference for a World Cup team in 2026?
Mentioned.
Go ahead.
I was saying, you mentioned earlier about like taking a 26-year-old into this camp rather than a promising 22-year-old, and what's the more what benefits the squad more. And I was thinking, maybe Pochettino, he's only got, maybe he's only planning to be here through 2026, and he's looking for results now guy. So in his mind, someone with a couple more years and a little bit more professional experience might mean more to him come less than 18 months until the World Cup.
Yeah, I think, there are lots of different motivations for Poach, and he's getting paid the money to figure it out. So he's got to create some depth in his squad or in his player pool, which is like, regardless of what I think about any of these players breaking into a first team national team right now, it doesn't hurt. It's not a bad idea to have a look at players so that you have some information to go on if you are suddenly down to your sixth choice center back, right? If you need to call that guy in because two guys have gotten hurt, now you need somebody in. Well, is that Miles Robinson? Is it Walker Zimmerman? Is it Jalen Neal? Is it George Campbell? These players will get a look so that Poach will have that information. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I do also think that the culture of the team is important. And even if Pulisic and McKennie and all of those guys, Gio Reyna, even if they're not with this group, they're certainly aware. It's the same flag. It's the same organization. It's the same team. It's the same coach. So I do think it matters on some level if Pochettino can get victories against Venezuela and Costa Rica. By the way, Costa Rica with a brand new manager. That's going to be fascinating when they show up to play the United States, because Miguel Herrera has just been named Costa Rica's new manager, new head coach. So that'll be interesting. That is interesting.
That'll add a little flavor to that.
Yeah, look, I think I can be like, hey, good for these guys. I'm glad they're getting recognition. There's something to that. I just don't know that outside of a Tolkien and maybe a Schulte, I'm not looking at that group going, here's a guy I could see. And now there will be surprises in 26. I'm just not sure that any of these guys are going to be those surprises.
So the broad answer to that is not many of these guys come into the mix. But last note before we move on from January camp roster discussion, which one of these position groups is the better and which one is concerning, that shows like, where our national team or our domestic based player pool is at?
Well, we remain in a situation where there are no top MLS goal scorers that are American. Brian White, I think, has been the leading American goal scorer for a couple of years now. Now that Jossie Zardes' career is on the downswing, there just aren't a lot of top-level goal scorers. Luna's getting his share of goals, but not as a center forward. I guess I'm talking about center forwards more than anything else. So I guess you could throw Luna into that mix as an example of a player who can find goals as an American. Center back. I mean, look, let's just be honest about the center back situation. The fact that you're calling in Ream, Robinson, and Zimmerman, and all of those guys have been in the national team picture, are well-known commodities, are, in the case of Ream, on the very back end of his career. And if you had your druthers, you would like to replace him with somebody just as good who is 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, even younger. And that's Neal and Campbell. And I'll throw this in here from Mateo. No shade, but I've never even heard of George Campbell. What's his level? He is right now an above average MLS center back, right? But he's not as good as Jackson Reagan, who didn't get called in, but again is 26. Jalen Neal is somebody everybody thinks of as talented, but doesn't have enough sort of resume for us to go, yep, that's a guy that we imagine might be in the national team picture in the years to come. I mean, Jalen Neal's only 21. I think it's worth pointing out. He's only 21. He kind of popped up and got a chance with the Galaxy at a young age. So let's not give up on him. Like, we shouldn't give up on anybody who's in that age range. But nobody at this point is showing us that they are ready for prime time. And that's probably a good thing on some level, in the sense that our best players are in Europe, right? And whatever you think of Chris Richards and how it's going at Palace, he's still playing at a higher level than anybody else in this group. Mm-hmm. So he should be in the national team picture as long as he's getting minutes with Crystal Palace in the English Premier League. There you go. This is actually a good shout. Jesus Ferreira, probably the best American goal scorer from a forward position in that group. And he is in that group, but he's not a player that anybody wants to see in the national team picture when we call up a team to play meaningful games against top-level opposition. No.
We'll see what happens. January games come across our screens on January 18th and January 22nd. We'll see if any of those players we see later in the month have any impact when we get to was it Nations League qualifying or Nations League finals and the Gold Cup. The Gold Cup is a thing in the summer of 2025. Hit that subscribe button to Morning Kickaround. The YouTube is on the drive, the fight for 500, and we creep ever closer with each click. Be careful when you smash the screens. I don't know how many replacements you have, but I hear you're supposed to smash that button. We're going to come right back in just 1 second with today's big question on Wednesday's Morning Kickaround. The big question here on Wednesday, English tabloids have a way with, getting ahead of themselves when they run a tabloid headline. But one of them was pretty wild, which leads us to the question, do we want Elon Musk involved in soccer?
First of all, I have to ask you, Robert, as a Liverpool fan, are you triggered by this headline in the Weekend Sport tabloid over in England?
I'm not a big curse word guy, but when you put that in the in our Slack, I literally said, "Are you shitting me?" I mean, no way, because I hadn't seen this, and when you drop that into the Slack, I would say quote unquote triggered Rob when I saw that. I would not be a fan of that, and I can't imagine what Liverpool supporters would say, because there's already what is it, Fenway Group, FSG, people already don't like them for their American influence and their handling of contracts and the way they do things. I can only imagine what the reaction would be if Elon Musk to buy Liverpool gains any more ground, because this tabloid, Weekend Sport, not a highly respected outlet, and there's been some articles written saying there's not a whole lot to this. It kind of spun from Elon's father doing an interview where he said quite a few things, including his son would be interested in buying Liverpool.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, there's obviously some sort of there's an extra level to my response to this idea, because if it was just Elon Musk, richest man in the world, interested in Liverpool, without everything that's happened over the last year or so, I guess you could even say 8 months or so, I would be like, oh, that doesn't sound. Does that sound good for Liverpool? I mean, the thing I know about Elon Musk is that he is a hands-on individual, right? He is not a wallflower. He's not one of these quiet billionaires. You know what I'm talking about? Those kind of billionaires, Robert, the kind that you don't know. Like one day you're like, somebody says, oh, billionaire Thomas McGillicuddy. And you're like, wait, I'd never heard of Thomas McGillicuddy. And they're like, yeah, he manages a wealth fund and he launched a software company that tracks the market. And he's, that's why he's a billionaire. I'm like, okay, well, that guy's a billionaire that you don't hear about. And maybe he invests in soccer, but it's like as an investment. It's just like, oh, he just wants to, just get his money into the game because the game's growing. In this case, with Elon Musk, that if he got his hands on Liverpool, he would be involved.
Yeah, there's no quiet ownership there.
No, like he would be in the box. He would be on camera all the time. He would be doing press conferences after matches. He would be tweeting. Imagine Elon Musk. I guess we're still calling them tweet. Imagine Elon Musk on his X platform posting about Liverpool while he was watching a team he owned play a soccer match. Can you like that? It makes your stomach turn just a little bit, I think. And it's not even about the politics. It's just about how he handles himself as a human being in the world with all the money he has and all the power he has. Just the way he handles himself.
You sent a shiver down my spine when I was thinking of like a glib 3-word tweet following a result, like thoughts on this or something like that, are totally unacceptable. No.
Rob, he would put up a poll and he would say, should I fire Arne Slot? And he would put up a poll and he would say, I will do whatever the poll says I should do. And then we get people responding yes or no to what.
I don't like this topic. I don't like this topic, Jason. We've done a variety of topics on this show in the 2+ months we've done it, and I think this is probably my least favorite topic.
Now, to be clear about this, again, you mentioned it was his dad who said he would like to buy them. Of course, who wouldn't like to buy them? This is now sort of spiraled into all of these tabloids and all these various hucksters of rumors and nonsense, posting things like he intends to execute a $5 billion takeover of Liverpool. I mean, this is the Mirror. Elon Musk's huge net worth as he plans to buy Liverpool and revolutionize soccer in UK. The fact that the Mirror used the word soccer is interesting. They use soccer in South Africa. I actually don't know what they say soccer down in South Africa. Not even sure.
I think so, but I don't know for 100%. It wouldn't surprise me.
By the way, you mentioned this already. So Liverpool has American owners who have done incredible work changing the reputation of American owners in England, because before FSG, it was a disaster zone. I mean, Liverpool had American owners before FSG,
and it didn't go well.
And it was terrible. They were burning American flags out front of Anfield. Like they were going. It was even worse than the United fans and how they have responded to the way things have been handled by their American owners.
Yeah, you think back about like 2012 or so, Liverpool's situation was pretty bleak.
It was pretty bad. But if Elon Musk took over any club but Liverpool, because that's who we're talking about here, I guess he's a fan. Is that what his dad is implying?
I'm not quite sure, because some tweets have surfaced of I think I might vaguely remember this, but Elon put a tweet up saying that he was going to buy Man U not too long ago.
Okay,
so,
well
I don't know.
Yeah.
He's a scatterbrained guy, so I would be surprised if he even cares about sports. He's probably the cultural positioning, but I'm not sure if now that I think about it a little bit deeper, I'd be surprised if he bought it, because I don't know how much government subsidy he could receive by purchasing Liverpool.
He probably sees football, and maybe even specifically English football, as one of the examples of how Western civilization is so important to world history. And if not for Western civilization, we would all be cavemen knocking rocks around. And hey, look, football is shows how great certain kinds of people. I don't want to get into that. Sorry, I got dragged into something I shouldn't have. What I was going to ask is, if Elon Musk did buy Liverpool, would he be American owner Elon Musk? I mean, I know he's American now, but he's not originally. Like, would we have to? If it was bad, would we be saddled with this is an American owner, Elon Musk, or would it be American, South African American owner Elon Musk? Would he get hyphenated? How would that go? You think? I'm curious.
Well, I don't know. He might get compartmentalized to that in a way, because that's kind of how it was framed in these tabloid things. But he's kind of hard to put in a specific box. Obviously, I would say he's just omnipotent, but what he represents is so counterculture to the Liverpool as a city and the kind of the supporters culture of Liverpool. There's a very kind of socialistic sort of a bent to Liverpool, and very workers first, and definitely like resistant to nationalism and all that sort of stuff. And
you're telling me dock workers are not like on board with some of the policies and labor practices? I mean, maybe that's true in the United States. I actually don't know how it goes over there in Liverpool, but anyway, continue.
Well, it's definitely a labor first. No, you were right. I mean, it is, dock workers and very much workers' rights. And there's lots of stories throughout history of, the national government kind of like stepping down and punching down on the city of Liverpool and the people from that region of the country in general. And so, they don't really have a fond taste of the elites or people coming from outside of the area. That's why the American ownership, there's a fair amount of resistance, even with the success that they've experienced. There's still American resistance. So having a billionaire who has some even dicier politics than the average man, like I said, I think the internet actually, not the hyperbole or the cliche of breaking the internet, that might actually do it. Yeah, and things out in front of the stadium.
I am fairly certain this isn't happening. I can't. Again, FSG has already actually made a statement and said, no, this is not happening. We're not selling. We're committed to the club. And by the way, that those are statements that sometimes precede the opposite thing happening. If I remember correctly, Jack Dorsey on Twitter said, oh, there's no way Elon Musk is buying Twitter, and then he bought Twitter, and then it happened, right? Because basically he went to the board and said, I'm going to give you all this money, and the board was like, well, that's a deal we have to take. And everybody who said it's not happening got pushed out. I guess this is clickbait, right? This is headline fodder. Elon Musk is hot right now in the sense that everything he does is newsworthy. So of course, somehow we get his name connected to soccer. I hope it, for your sake, Rob, I hope it doesn't happen. Everything is going so well at Liverpool right now. You don't need this. You don't. United doesn't need this either, by the way. As much as Paul Scholes is out there ripping Ineos for what they've done at Manchester United, which is never, when the class of 92 starts chirping, it's just too much. It's just too much. And I know you said Elon Musk joked about buying United. I hope that doesn't happen either. That would be terrible for Manchester United.
And I was going to say, even if this somehow did happen, I don't think this, the repercussions of him purchasing Liverpool, I don't think would be isolated to Liverpool. It would not be solely a Liverpool related issue at all. I think it would send some ripple effects across the way. He would try to change the structure, have his own TV. Maybe all games are on Twitter now. And
oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, a couple of things. Does he pass the fit and proper persons test? That's what is exactly, I mean, is it only money? Because he would pass that part of the test. I guess if it's only money, okay, the fit and proper persons test is the thing. And as you're saying, he would probably try to change the structure. And I'm thinking, Manchester City has enjoyed this position as uber wealthy relative to their competition. And then in order to get around rules that limit how much you can spend on your players, they have massaged the value of contracts and marketing deals with entities that are directly connected with the royal family. of the UAE and the owners. Elon Musk, I mean, he could just say, X is buying a sponsorship with Liverpool for $3 billion and, PSR be damned. What are they going to do about it, Rob? He's been able to throw his financial weight around everywhere else. Maybe that would actually be good for Liverpool. They wouldn't have to follow the rules anymore because Elon breaks them everywhere.
All right, this is one of those moments where I know you are a true talk radio professional. If you were able to spin that yarn and somehow, come up with some scarily realistic or counterpoint here. So kudos to you, hats off to you. But please, let's move on and never talk about this again. Hopefully, this is something we don't ever have to deal with.
Okay.
I think that's our show for Wednesday. I do want to tease, though, we will have a guest on Friday. We're going to delve deeper into the MLS transfer news topic with the one and only Tom Bogert. So feel free to send in any questions or queries for the Scoops guru here in MLS-related transfer circles. Be sure to subscribe. Morning Kickaround, 2 words, morning, and then the Kickaround. That's what we do here. And then we're trying to get to that 500 mark. Subscribe across social media. And I guess we'll see if Postacoglu's inspirational quotes will drive them on against Liverpool this afternoon. And then we'll see you again on Friday, and you will be in your home.
I will be back in my home studio. I'll hate it, but I'll be back there. I'm going to say this. Also, we have decided to drop every show as a podcast. Right now, it just lives on Spotify. So we will probably be passing that through to other locations in the near future. But for the moment, if you want to hear the show after the fact, or maybe you heard part of it and you just want to have it on the go, because I don't think driving and watching YouTube is a good idea, go over to Spotify and you can find it there.
All right. Until next time, your morning's been kicked. Enjoy your soccer.